So yeah, so I renovate a lot more of them now than I ever used to. Um, Here's kind of my model in the business now. Um, Whereas when my first year, I had no money or no access to money. And I say access to money because now I borrow money from private lenders and private investors. Um, and their money is secured by the deal. They're literally just like a regular Bank of America mortgage or whatever it is. Their their investment is a loan rather than an investment. And I would say the difference between an investment and a loan is the loan secured and investment is not. So their investment is actually a loan. It's a secured investment against the property in first position or second position. It just depends on the amount and the reason for the capital and what's being done with that property. Um, but so that's how I fund them now. And since I do have, and I'm always looking for more funding sources, more people that I can give, an additional income stream to, something different from a CD or a bond or, a market index fund. But now that I have access to capital, I'm buying a lot more of them. And so here's my model. If I can get a deal on creative terms, which would be if the seller will take their money over time and the seller wants to be the bank on that deal, I'll buy it on seller financing. And that'll pretty quickly become a rental or a rent to own type of property, depending on the condition of the property. If that's on a property that's usually free and clear, they own it outright. If it's a totally different situation, so that's if the seller has a ton of equity. If they've like close to no equity, I'll offer to take over that mortgage payment. Because what else happened back in 2020 when I was learning this business? The market was super hot. Interest rates are like 2 and 3% interest rates on mortgages. They're not that now. They're closer to 6 to 7 range percent. Huge bump. I'll try to take over those mortgages at 2 to 3%. So I'll buy the property subject to that mortgage. And again, that'll be a rental or a rent to own type of property. Lastly, if I cannot get creative terms on a transaction like the ones I just mentioned, have the seller be the bank or take over the note that the current owner already has and buy it that way, I'll buy it cash. And when I buy it cash, I'm using investor funds or hard money, which is called hard money because it's based on that hard asset, that house. And I'll borrow the purchase price and I'll borrow the renovation cost. And then I'll renovate that property and then refinance it within 3 to 6 months. Lastly, and I know I just talked a lot and there's probably a ton of questions. Lastly, if none of that works, like my sweet spot is buying houses for roughly 100 to 200 grand, selling them or refinancing them based off a value of 300 to 350. 250 to 350, I'd say. That's just kind of my sweet spot that I like. Every once in a while, I'll get a lead. Had one recently, actually over in the Yorktown area, and it was like a $400,000 home. And it was a massive house and just way too big of a project than I wanted to take on, and had the interest in taking on, especially for a higher end renovation, which is a much less forgivable neighborhood, much less forgiving buyer. If you've got a few quality issues or a couple boo-boos on a class C type of neighborhood on a starter home, you'll be okay. But if you make any mistakes on that higher end, it's going to be a lot harder to sell. Those I'll still wholesale to investors that are more experienced and have more robust businesses than I do to take on something of that size.
Man, that's fascinating stuff.